Welcome to Trail Manners, the podcast so dedicated to mountain trails and running that they broadcast out of a 78 Volkswagen bus in the mountains. Who does that? Eric and Joel are your hosts and will bring you the trail life as you may have not heard it before. You hear about everything from gear reviews, nutrition to keep you upright and moving forward, and they'll even bring guests into the bus for conversations that you won't hear anywhere else. It's time for some running adventures on a higher elevation. The old 78 Volkswagen bus is fired up and headed to the mountains. Here are your hosts for Trail Manners, proudly representing the 801 with their passion and love for the trails, Eric Manning and Joel Hatch.
Welcome to the Trail Manners Podcast, episode number 117. Today, we're going to be talking again with Mr. Preston Wood, fresh off his Western States 100 run just a few days ago. So if this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The Trail Manners Podcast is produced every week for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at trailmanners.com. Come back often, and please feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trail Manners. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get at it. All right, welcome to the Trail Manners Podcast, episode number 117. As you heard in the introduction, we've got Preston Wood back with us. Just a few weeks ago, we had him on talking about his, preparation for Western States. And, Western States is over for 2018. And we got him on the show. It's only been 3 days.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's just been all one big, long day, really. So it's been kind of a rush.
Yeah, because you came right back.
Yeah, we did. You know, we finished up Sunday, I guess it was, and went back and slept, then ate, and then slept some more, and then drove back yesterday. So today's Tuesday. We drove back Monday, and now we're here.
Well, nice.
Yeah.
Well, we usually launch our shows Tuesday morning, but we had to get you on. We wanted this to be fresh, so it's still in your mind, the good, the bad. If tears roll out, we won't let people know. So it'll still be launching today, which is Tuesday. But real quick, we did get you on just a few episodes ago. So a quick little recap. You're our 300-pound lineman, down to a svelte probably 185 after the race.
I don't know. At the end of the race, I think I was like 175. I lost a lot of weight, I think. I looked pretty skinny, I thought. But, yeah, I think I started around 190.
Around 90?
Yeah.
And we also talked to you, which was really cool, was the day before Squaw Peak. And you talked to us, and you threw it down, and you said, I want to go under 10:30. And I think as we walked away, I think you might have even said, I'd really like to go under 10, but I didn't want to really throw it out there. Well, you did 9:37.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I had a good day at Squaw for sure. That was a good tune-up. 50 miles is a lot easier than 100 miles for sure. I mean, I know that sounds funny, but I mean, somebody at the end of Squaw said the real test of your manhood is the 100-mile distance. A guy that's pretty dialed into it. So he kind of brought me back to earth because I had a real good day at Squaw. You know, 50 miles felt good.
Yeah.
And so I was pretty confident heading into Western after that.
Well, 100 miles is 50 miles times 2.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't that how that works?
It'd be probably twice as hard, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm
mean, I'm not real good at math.
Math-wise, it should be twice as hard.
It's
but
probably more than that.
A lot more, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Considering your factors. And we're back at the same park. Yeah. We're actually sitting under a really nice pavilion because the table we used last time's in the sun. Preston brought the heat with him. I'm just sitting here just ready to take my shirt off, and we might be no mas pantalones by the end of this thing, man. Too bad we're in a park with kids, or I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah, probably wouldn't be a good place to do that.
So let's get into Western States. I mean, that's why we're here. That's kind of the creme de la creme of what we did. But the first thing we need to do is give you a little knock first, 2 knocks, and then we'll let you be happy.
All right.
How's that? Because that's what we bring to the table.
For sure.
So I saw some photos, and I did not see any ripped shirts with tassels on the bottom like we talked about.
Oh, that's right.
We talked about you cutting them and tying them like Ultimate Warrior. Didn't see the photos. I'm not saying it didn't happen. Like, I'm not going to completely throw you under the bus, but we said we'd sponsor a new shirt. Didn't see any of those. We also talked a little bit about you finishing in the top 100. You were 106.
Yeah.
So not sure what we need to do for training next time to get 6 more places up. But I think coming away from it, if that's our only knocks, I think we're okay. Because you did have a goal, and you did throw it down. And I mean, me and Joel, I listened to the podcast yesterday to kind of, prep for it, and you said, I'd like to go under 24, and both me and Joel at the same time, like, whoa, like, nice.
That's serious.
And you did, 23:41.
Yep.
Which means you get the big, shiny silver buckle.
Yeah, I brought it with me, actually.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh, it's in the box.
Yeah.
Ooh,
that is pretty.
Oh, man.
So it's all nice and shiny here in the box.
That scares me. Don't hand it over to me.
They gave us a polishing cloth for it. But while you guys are
That's nice.
I don't want to touch it, because if I drop it on the concrete, I'm going to feel bad.
It's all good. But going back to your first 2 knocks.
So cool.
So with the shirt, though, I just would have felt like the elites might have gotten a little offended and wanted to fight me, because that's what they all did seriously, right? They all cut holes in their shirts. They all
super diamond pattern.
Yeah, they were like all patterned up, and I would
they have seen you?
Yeah, at the start,
okay.
Yeah,
for sure.
They would have been told jelly of your tassels on the bottom.
For sure.
Come on.
I could have fought them all, too, I'm sure.
Easily.
Yeah.
You outweigh them by a good 50 pounds.
For sure.
You'd been like, fellas.
Yeah, really?
And so I would have felt like they might have taken it as mocking. I didn't want to be that big of a D-bag about that.
You didn't want to take away from their
exposure. Exactly. They're doing it for their sponsors,
Right.
Ric Flair probably would sponsor me if he knew how tough I was.
We said we would. If you'd have ended up on the cover of the magazine,
for
they would have felt bad. They would have got like inside cover, right, or back cover, where all the ads go for nutrition.
Right. No doubt, they would have put it in there somewhere. I would have been the talk of the race for sure.
Who's the guy with the sweet stash and that sweet gear?
Yeah, that's what they would have been wondering.
And then you would have saw at the award ceremony, they would have all done that to their polos.
They would have. They all would have followed. They all would have followed for sure.
Yeah. They'd have been, we'll check this
out. And then we'll get to the other knock of the no top 100, because I really did want that pretty bad.
Did you?
Yeah,
okay.
I was pushing pretty hard.
Well, hey, you know what? That's just
we can maybe let that slide this
year.
It's just all in fun, because I tell you what, sub 24, like even your buckle says one day.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
I'd wear that buckle all the time.
Oh, yeah. I would, too.
I'll be wearing it to any event that requires me to tuck a shirt in, I think.
You know what?
Even not.
Just
the front, right?
You want to start a new trend? Bolo tie it.
Bolo tie.
How would that be?
That's going to be a health hazard.
I would
not do that.
Just around my neck?
Well,
I don't know.
You get some massages.
Cut off that Adam's apple.
Yeah, I could put it on a chain like Flavor Flav.
There you go.
That's where we're getting
at.
Much better.
Just jack it up for the dressy days.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
You got
a nice tight chain.
Nah, man. The
and
dressy days, you just wear a button down.
But you still do. You wear a button down.
With
you
the
only
chest
button,
hair.
and you only button the top 2 buttons.
For sure.
Leave all the buttons undone, just the top 2, and then the bolo. So you're kind of a bolo cholo.
Yeah. No, that'd be the real deal.
Right?
That'd be the real deal.
If you want to make your mark, you got to go big.
I got to start following your guys' fashion advice. I would have already had all my pictures by now if I would have done the shirt thing, because they would have been all over the Western States Facebook page.
For sure.
Who's this clown?
Yeah.
They would have been wondering.
Who's this pic from Utah?
Who's this guy?
It would have been like hashtag he's bringing it. That's
it would have been
and
for
then
sure.
They would have cited the award ceremony, the bolo cholo, and it's like a new thing.
Yeah,
someone's going to make that Instagram handle.
Yeah, they are for sure.
Just because of that. So.
Yep.
But yeah, we want to break down the race. We want to kind of get the inside scoop for a lot of us who haven't run. We also want to give some tips for people that want to run. But I guess what everybody wants to know, probably before anything, is like, at what point did you realize you weren't going to catch Walmsley?
As soon as the gun went off, I kind of knew that it was over.
Did you?
Did you get to see him?
I was so worried. I wore a jacket to the start line, and my wife and crew, everybody stayed back in the car while I walked up, because it was kind of cold, at the start. It was like 40 degrees or something.
Yeah.
Because, you're at like 6,500 feet there at the start at Squaw Valley. And so I was more worried about trying to give my jacket so I didn't lose my nice, running jacket that I have. And so I was more concerned about that, and I saw Zach Marion, and I was like, hey, Zach, can you give this to Katie? So Zach grew up down the street from my wife, Katie.
Okay.
And actually, Zach's little sister's how I met my wife.
Oh, okay.
They were best friends growing up, and so I was like, Zach, just give this to Katie, find her somehow.
Right.
And that's what I was more focused on. But it wouldn't have mattered anyways. I mean, the only chance I would have had is if I would have ran up there and tripped like Jim and Francois.
So what you're saying in a roundabout way is you gave him a head start.
I did. Yeah.
And a different
My poor planning gave them the head start.
Gave them a head start, plus you had a different racing plan.
Yeah.
Right? Yours wasn't to go out fast like theirs.
Yeah.
So just the mix of the two, it was just kind of meant to be, right?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I wanted to let him, you know, feel good at the start of the race. You know, and I wanted to run my own race.
It was his year.
It was his year.
Yeah.
You know, when I went to race check-in, I think it's one of the guys on the board. I don't know who any of those Western States bigwigs are, but they're all there, and they're very involved in the check-in and the process. But he said, "Oh, I thought you were Jim Walmsley for a minute." He said that was the first thing he said to me, and I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah. So
you're like, okay, can I just
yeah,
check in?
it's all good.
Can I just check in now?
Yeah.
Or better yet, we'll just give me his bib number.
Yeah.
We'll see how this plays out.
For sure. So, anyways, but we can start through the whole process because it's pretty interesting how they run things out there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I went out there once to pace and crew Jim Skaggs, so you know I kind of got the first-hand feel. But just looking online now, it looks like it's even grown much more than when I was there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been, I don't know how many years it's been. It's been 5+ years maybe, right in there. So tell us a little bit about that. You arrive in Squaw Valley, you go to race check-in, kind of walk us through a quick process because we definitely want to hit to the race, but walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so you check in the day before the race. You can do it anywhere from 9 until like 1 o'clock. And you go in, and it's just crazy. I mean, there's camera crews everywhere now. I mean, the Cowboys had their camera crews. You had the Solomon crew with their camera crews. You had all sorts of random it was insane. I mean, you see all the big guys that make the movies on YouTube, you know, like Billy Yang's running around. You know, you just see all these big, huge names in ultra running, and they're just right there. You know, that's one of the coolest things about our sport. I mean, I towed the line at the same race as arguably the two best guys in the sport right now with Jim and Francois. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody that could argue that between the two different styles.
Well,
and
first and second this week.
Yeah. Well, and they were first and second, and they're, you know, two different styled runners, and then Courtney DeWalter, and you're just seeing all the top females running around, and I mean, it was insane. I mean, everywhere you look, there's somebody that to me is famous.
Yeah. Right.
And to my wife, she's like, well, who are they?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. It's like, what's up, Frank?
Yeah. You know, and so, you know, Ryan Sands is there walking around, the winner of last year's race, because he's pacing Francois. And I walked up to him and was like, if I had a pen, I'd have you sign the program. And he just chuckled because his face is, you know, on the program. And,
right.
you know, everybody's trying to take pictures with him, obviously, too. But, you know, I can't even imagine the pressure on those guys. First of all, just the hype surrounding the race is the real deal. I mean, you hear people talk about it, but it is the Super Bowl of ultra running in the United States.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what UTMB is going to be like. You know,
that's like 10x.
I mean, that's like,
yeah,
because there's so many more people running
right.
the race. So I bet they actually can hide a little bit better there.
True.
But where there's only 369 starters, I think, at this race, it's a small group of runners, but there's so many people.
Right.
So you go and you check in, and they're real strict with their check-in policy, right? You have to show ID. They give you a gold wristband that you have to wear the rest of the weekend.
Right.
You go through, they take your picture, they take an official picture with your bib number, and then they attach that to your tracking. Then you go through and they give you a bag that says Western States 100 on it. You know, they're very well branded, obviously, with their logo. And then you walk through and they just give you the most free stuff you've ever gotten in your life. It was crazy. I mean, a shirt, a hat, Drymax socks that say Western States 100-mile endurance run, 1 day, 2018.
Right.
All sorts of food. 3 different buffs, you know, a Western States custom buff, a couple other just company buffs. I mean, I probably almost got my race entry just right there.
Yeah, walking out with a sore arm.
In your swag bag. And I think it's because, you know, the brands have realized that it's such a big deal that, you know, just to get their name out there, they're willing to give so much away.
Right.
You know, you get Squirrel's nut butter for free. You get anything you can think of almost. I think I got something from every major, like, ultra company that you could pretty much come up with.
Now, did Squirrel's Nut Butter, did they have a lube station there?
Oh, they did.
Sweet.
Yeah, they had lots of lube stations.
Did they have, like, somebody with gloves, just jump on in, I'll take care of it?
You know, they
Lubologist?
didn't, but they did have people monitoring to make sure that the same, you know, big popsicle sticks didn't get used.
Yeah,
on the,
no double dipping.
No double dipping
Yeah.
on the SNB.
Yeah.
But we went through check-in, and then I met up with Brandon Dace, and we went to the meeting at 2 o'clock, and that's a big, you know, dog and pony show.
Yeah.
It's crazy
Long,
to watch.
huh?
It's long. It's hot.
Yeah.
You know, saw Amy Blackham there. as well at the meeting, and with Seth, her husband, and Jeremy Sawinski was there with her crew. It was a madhouse. And they sat outside. Me and Brandon are kind of fanboying it on all the top dogs. So we went in and watched and sweat and stood there. But it's cool.
Yeah.
The experience of Western States, whether you're pacing or running, is just a really neat experience. Just because how it's run.
Yeah.
So that was all the pre-race hubbub, right? And then went home and tried to sleep.
After all that, going through your goodie bag and trying to figure out what you're going to keep.
We went and got some pizza that night and then went to bed.
Was the pizza like logoed Western States?
It wasn't. The pizza was in Tahoe City. Tahoe City's a cool town.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Really cool. So we went in there, just this little pizza shop. We walked in, and my pacer, Heather, wanted a salad, so we asked them if they had salad, and all the guys all at once in unison said, no salads.
That's awesome.
So
They've been practicing.
They just had calzones and pizza and ice cream, and it was a great little pizza shop.
So they didn't put, like, pepperoni and, like, number 100 on your pizza?
No, they didn't. It was the only thing I ate that wasn't branded all weekend, I think.
That you know of.
Yeah. And so we, went back, tried to relax. I actually got some pretty good sleep. I think I got about 5 hours that night.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's
really good. I have to keep telling myself the night before a big race that the work's done.
Right.
Me being nervous isn't going to change anything better or worse. So I tried to get some sleep, and we woke up at 4 o'clock, and we're at the race start by like 4:30. You know, I always take a shower the day of the race. I like to loosen up, feel good,
right?
Feel clean for once, you know, because I'm not going to feel clean the rest of the day.
No, you're not.
And, put on the Ric Flair shirt, got everything, ready to go, double, triple checked everything, and away we went.
Nice.
So to the start line. And we kind of went over that. I hung out there, saw Brandon there again, Brandon Dace, and we chatted. He was pretty fired up to give it a go. He'd been out to the Western States training run. We all had big goals going into the day, and we knew it was going to be a scorcher. And we just both kept telling each other, be smart. Don't be dumb.
Yeah. Don't
be dumb. 100 miles is a long ways, and so
unless you're Carl.
Yeah, unless you're Carl, then it's not too far. But it's hard. That's what he started to change it to.
Yeah.
It is hard, but it's not that far.
Right.
And so I just kept telling Brandon, just walk this whole first 4.5 miles up the escarpment, right? So for those that don't know, the race starts at the ski resort at the bottom, and you go straight up. I mean, it's like 2,500 feet and 4 miles.
Yeah.
And it's just like any ski resort, fire roads and a little bit of single track, just normal, gain. But, what do you really gain in a 100-mile race in the first 4 miles if you run that whole thing?
Nothing.
Maybe 10 minutes.
That's Florian.
Yeah.
Yeah, Florian went out pretty fast.
Lots of people.
To the top
lots of people went out really fast. And some people held on and some didn't. It's one of those things where you get told it enough that it doesn't matter, but you still get pumped up for the race.
Right, with all the hoopla and the people around you.
And so many people at the start. Drones everywhere, cameras everywhere, people with these big, huge, fancy cameras on these huge gimbals, chasing everybody. And, you start to see, the run steep, get high camera crew guys. And I mean, you get to the top, and there's just even more cameras. And there's cameras everywhere. It's insane. You feel like you're a pro, even when you're just an average Joe. That's the coolest part of it, probably.
So everybody out there that's planning Western States or would like to get in the future, make sure you're well groomed.
Yeah, you got to look good.
Race morning.
You got to look good.
Yeah,
because you're going to get a lot of pictures taken of you.
And they'll last.
Yep. And so we get up the climb, and I walked every step. I mean, I didn't really care. But looking back, I got a little frustrated because you get up to the top, and then it's pretty classic mountain single track when you get up there. And for us that are pretty accustomed to those sorts of trails, it was pretty buttery good trails, I thought.
Was it?
But I was far enough back that there was people that were not confident running on that stuff.
Uh-oh.
And so it was like, as Amy Blackham said later when she caught up to me, because she started slow and smart too, and she's a smart 100-mile racer.
Yeah,
she's really smart, really accomplished. And she's like, I can't believe people are causing a reverse conga line.
Right.
Like there was conga lines on the downhills. not on the uphills.
Oh, wow.
And so it was just lines and lines of people to pass, and you were trying to play it smart and not stress yourself out by trying to pass everybody. And,
right.
And so I just kept saying, okay, get to the first aid station at mile 10, and then hopefully I can just blow through and pass a bunch of these people.
So how you say to mile 10, I mean, how crowded is it? Because you hear a lot of races, we're going to start here, but that'll give people time to spread out.
It was pretty crowded.
So like through mile 10, it was kind of like still pretty.
I would say through the second aid station, I think it's 16 or 17, it was really crowded.
Still, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I think I started probably back third. I think the first aid station I was in like 220th place or something.
So you moved up.
So yeah, just a little bit. And so I was just maybe too far back.
Right.
Maybe I should have started a little bit ahead. Eric Nelson, who I met later in the race from Salt Lake, I think he started just a little bit ahead of me and didn't have as many problems.
I was going to say that. So that might be the flip to taking that climb a little quicker then, right?
And not necessarily running it hard, but being a little more aggressive.
On the
right.
Yeah, and it's cool enough that you're not. I guess that's the catch is you've got to choose. Do I just take it real easy and have to deal with all the other people, or do I just kind of go a little harder and be in a place where I can run loose? Because I felt like I was running tight those first 10 miles. I was just stressed.
Right.
I couldn't even just do a comfortable stride, a comfortable jog. I felt like I was forcing myself to slow down, and maybe it paid off at the end, maybe not.
True.
It's just hard to ever know, really.
But it kept you in the heat longer.
Yeah, and that's the key. So, anyways, we get through those first couple aid stations, and the high country out there, I can't tell you enough. It is incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
It is one of the coolest, sections of trail I've ever run. I would liken it to the Skyline Trail here, but with huge pine trees. Just huge pines. You're up high. You're lots of ridge running.
Yeah.
From mile 10 to 16, you're like on a ridge, and it is just so neat to see. And it was very enjoyable. The scenery was. If it wouldn't have been such a log jam, it would have been even more enjoyable.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's about when Amy Blackham caught up to me, and her and I worked together all the way to Devil's Thumb. Probably we were just kind of working in and out together.
Just give people an idea of distance at Devil's Thumb.
So Devil's Thumb. So Last Chance I think is at 46. And then the climb to Devil's Thumb starts at like 50 and a half or so.
So quite a bit of distance.
Yeah, quite a bit of distance. Yeah, and that helped to have somebody to talk to, somebody that I knew was going to run a smart race and stay within herself. So I knew we were probably being pretty smart. And her husband, Seth, every time he'd see me, be smart. That's all he said to me all day, be smart. And so anyways, but we get into Robinson. Well, I'll back up. So Duncan Canyon's the first real big aid station.
Right. Because
crew can go to Duncan Canyon. And my crew didn't go there because it's a real long trek.
It's a really long trek.
Yeah. And so you can basically either go to Duncan Canyon or Robinson Flat.
Right.
You have to pick one. And so we picked Robinson Flat because it was easier. And so we get into Duncan Canyon, and it is the craziest scene I'd ever seen. I mean, that's scene. That sounded kind of bad.
Okay. We know.
But it was intense. People screaming. I mean, like the head aid station guy's just on this megaphone, and here's Preston Wood,
Nice.
And they're just like screaming, and somebody immediately grabs me and is like, "What do you need? Let's get you going." They're like, "Let's get out of here. Come on, let's go." And they're asking me, "Okay, where do you want the ice?" And I had a bandana on that I used to carry ice on my neck all day. And then they just had ice sponge baths at every aid station.
Nice.
They said it was like 65 pounds of ice or something per runner this year, something insane like that. And so you get in there, they totally drench you, and then you're on your way, right? I refilled on some electrolyte stuff, some different sorts of things. And yeah, away we went. And down from Duncan Canyon you go, and then you hit your first big climb a couple miles after that.
Right.
And to me, that was the hardest climb of the day. I don't know why. If I was discouraged, because I had, my 24-hour goal in mind, and I was a little behind, but I knew I would be.
Yeah.
But it was hot, and it was long. So the short grunt climbs don't bug me. Like when I say grunt, I mean like 1,000 feet in a mile, and that's it. I can do that.
Right.
I can mentally say, okay, it's a mile.
I know what that is.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
But when it's 3.5 miles from the bottom after Duncan Canyon up to Robinson Flat, and you're gaining felt like a couple thousand feet, those kill me a lot more than the shorter, steeper climbs. And it was exposed, and I started to get real hot, and and had to really keep my focus there.
So what time of day was that? Would you
I got to Robinson Flat at 11:30, I think.
Okay, and it was just starting.
It was starting to get hot. Starting to get hot, and that's where the fire section was between Duncan Canyon and Robinson Flat. So it's real open. It's really beautiful in a way. I mean, where the fire's been, and to see the new growth coming through. But that's where at the bottom of Duncan Canyon is where you have your first opportunity to jump in a creek, and I jumped in a creek, and so jumped in there and then walked up, and I got to the aid station, and we were in and out. You know, I saw my crew there at Robinson, and that's the key of my day, I think, is at the Bear, I wasted so much time in aid stations.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be so focused to go under 24 hours. That was my biggest takeaway from the weekend, is the amount of focus that it takes to run under 24 hours in a 100-mile race is incredible. And if you lose focus, you can lose your goal.
Right.
And so we were in and out. Food-wise all day. I feel like I'm kind of rambling here, guys. So
no,
you're
doing great. We're not going to interrupt you.
Okay. So I get into Robinson Flat, and my plan nutritionally all day was to eat, my normal stuff at aid stations, which is usually potatoes and salt or watermelon and salt. So I did that at every aid station I could. And then I was using goos. I used toasted marshmallow goo all day.
That's good.
I like it. I mean, if it's going to be sweet, it might as well be something that's supposed to be that sweet.
Right.
It tastes pretty real, like a real marshmallow. And then I was using the Roctane drink all day, and so that's what I was using for my electrolytes, and lots of calories, because I think 2 scoops of that's like 250 calories.
Yeah. Right.
So I was trying really hard, 300 to 450 calories an hour, and I did really well on my nutrition plan.
Okay.
Because I sweat a ton. I mean, I really go through the electrolytes. And so I get into Robinson Flat. We get in and out. Mike, Heather, my pacer's husband, he was real dialed in. He was real good. Him and my wife both all day were just so dialed in on split times. While my brother took all the pictures, and Heather worried about
staying. He was your paparazzi.
Yeah, he was my paparazzi. And then Heather tried to stay rested as much as she could, because she had to run 38 miles later.
Yep. Yeah.
And so Mike was like, "Okay, you're like 45 minutes behind," and I was like, "I know, I should be right now. This is where I can start to make some time up." And he's like, "Okay, just stay focused. You can do it. Stay focused." That's what I told him to remind me, is to just stay focused, because that's the key. And so we take off, and out of Robinson Flat is 16 miles of downhill, basically.
Right.
There's a few little climbs, and as we're leaving Robinson Flat, I hear this voice. And I was like, I know that voice.
So it wasn't in your head?
No. And let me back up. So in Robinson Flat, it was good, though, too, because that's when I first saw Seth and Jeremy Sawinski, and they were teasing me. I saw Chris Pope there. Logan Ledford was there, because they were pacing Eric Nelson, who I hadn't met yet still at this point in the race. And so, I told Seth that Amy was right behind me. She was doing good. We're rolling, and they're, be smart. They're teasing me, getting me all excited. It's fun to see people Yeah.
Right.
And then we get out of the aid station. I hear this other voice that I know Dean Carnassus is there. He's running.
Right.
And, I wasn't going to blow his cover, because I've heard him talk about that in races, about how many selfies he has to take.
Oh, yeah. That
and
could be
so
annoying.
and so I thought nobody was around, and I was like, "Hey, Dean, how many little uphill sections are there on this part?" That's all I asked him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, there's quite a few, but they're pretty short.
Right.
But it's mostly downhill." And I was like, "Okay, that's good to know."
So he was cool about it.
Yeah, he was cool, because I just asked him a question, right?
Yeah,
Like, it was a legitimate, like, "Hey, I know you've run this course."
I would have been like,
and
you shave your legs.
But I was like, and I was like, "Okay, thank you." And then, of course, somebody heard, "Is that Dean Carnassus?" And I was like, "Oh, crap. He's going to hate me." And then he caught up to me later, and I was like, "Dean, I'm sorry I blew your cover, man."
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, it's okay." Because I wasn't looking, to bug him. Because I can imagine how frustrating that could get at times.
Ask Joel.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Right?
You can't hit a race without people like, "Hey, what's up,
Eric?"
Yeah, exactly. You just roll with it.
Joel's like, "All right, here's a selfie."
Yeah. So anyway, so I saw Dean Carnassus there. He gave me the heads up, and then it started to get really hot. Really hot. I think at the river, they said when Walmsley crossed, at the main river crossing at 78, it was 106.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that.
It was pretty hot.
Yeah.
And so
warm.
you start cooking, but I was able to stay wet. The best thing, main reason I wore that Ric Flair shirt is it's a good texture to absorb the water.
Right.
Everybody had some sort of cotton poly blend that was going to absorb water and not repel it. And so I was staying wet. I was trying to stay cool, staying focused. My legs felt like lead already, just because it was hot. And I just kept saying, force yourself to run, but don't run too hard.
Right.
You know, I was running like 30 miles, and it starts with like a pretty smooth fire road.
Right.
And you're going down, and then you'd have a section where you'd go up, and then we finally got to some single track. And this is where I met the coolest person of the day. Okay. I got to tell you guys about this. So there's this lady, and she's an older lady. I can tell, but I had no idea how old she was. And I was like, hey, so you're running pretty strong. How many silver buckles do you have? Uh-huh. And she's like, well, I've got 4. It's like, okay, so are we going to get another one today? And she's like, well, that's the plan, but that would be a record. Oh. And I was like, well, what do you mean that would be a record? She's like, well, I'm 60 years old. I'd be the oldest female to ever earn a silver buckle. Nice. And I'd have the record for over 60 for female. And I was like, okay, well, what's your name? And she's like, my name's Diana. And I had no idea who she was, but it was Diana Fitzpatrick is her name. And she's kind of a legend. She's on the Western States board. Right. She was so nice, though. And she's like, you know, if we're smart and we run hard from Forest Hill, we can get it. Okay. And, you know, so that was my mantra all day with everybody that I ran by is we can get it. We can get that silver buckle. Right. You know, stay focused, right? And so she really helped give me some confidence that we were running a smart race. And she could tell my effort wasn't where I was killing myself either, right? You know, we were running smooth. So I worked with her for a couple miles, and we just worked in and just kind of in and out of aid stations. I don't remember all of them, but it's like Dusty Corners is in there. Right. Sounds like a pretty funny name.
Dusty Bottoms.
Dusty Bottoms, Dusty Corners. It was a good aid station. They're all good aid stations, though. Got drenched there, was still able to eat. Perfect. My nutrition plan was going good. And then you get into Last Chance. And mile 46. Okay. So this is the aid station before you drop down into the canyon before the Devil's Thumb climb. Right. That's why they call it Last Chance, I think, because it's your last chance to cool off.
To get out.
Yeah. And it was a really good aid station, like extra good. They were real focused on getting everybody cool. And we get in there, and Amy's right there with me. She kind of gave me a boost going into that aid station. I hit kind of a low before that in calories, I think. Usually in 100 miles, as you guys know, if you hit a low, it's for a reason, right? You got to just try to process what that reason is and force yourself to fix it and adjust. So I took in some calories before the aid station, then ate as much as I could at that aid station, drinking a lot of Coke throughout the day, a lot of ginger ale, trying to get easy calories too because they're easy. And then they tell us, okay, it's 2 miles down to Devil's Thumb and then 2 miles out the other side. And there's a river down there, and there's Swinging Gate Bridge, they call it, down there at the bottom. And I started the descent, and this is when I really started to feel the heat. And I figured this is about the time that Walmsley and those guys were crossing the river. Right. So they were probably at 78-ish, and I was, you know, at about 50. And it was so hot on the downhill. Like, I felt like I was baking.
So it's like a convection oven down there.
The lower you go, like every step you're going down, it is nasty and muggy. And I started doing the math in my head, though, and I was like, well, there's no way that it's just 2 miles down there because Brandon Dace, who ran it in the training run, said it's only 1.25 miles. And Brandon is pretty dialed in. He's not going to say that climb is only 1.25 miles if it's 2 miles. Right. And so we get to the bottom, and I was like, well, that was 3 miles. And so I was like, 3 miles, that was the worst 3 miles of my life. Right. And if I felt like I wasn't moving, and I hurried, and I didn't want to, but you have to climb down to the river off the trail. Right. Like, it's not just an easy dunk at this one, but I was like, I've got to do it. Got to jump in the river. So I go, and I like cannonball into the river. Nice. You know, I cooled off. I sat there for a minute, and I was like, okay, we got to climb. Yep. And I knew it was going to be steep. But the surprising part for me, where we were in the race, it was shaded almost the whole time. Oh. So it was a pleasant surprise. Yeah. Because everybody had said how they bake on Devils. Well, I baked on the downhill because where the sun was. Gotcha. And then the uphill was kind of a relief, to be honest with you.
With all that water on it, too.
And after all the downhill, I mean, that was after 16 miles of downhill. The uphill, I just convinced myself that it was a relief.
Okay.
Even though it wasn't. But I convinced myself, and one thing they told us at that last chance aid station was that there's popsicles at Devil's Thumb.
Gotcha.
You know, when you start struggling, just remember the popsicles at Devil's Thumb, and that'll help you.
All right.
And so start climbing, and you know, I'd been working with the same people all day. You know, so Amy's there, just a little bit ahead of me. We're working it. It is steep. It's like, I don't know how to explain it around here. I mean, down in the Draper area, it reminded me of Cherry Canyon. Here, it reminded me of some of the steeper parts of Maylands. You know, it's like that kind of a climb, right? 1,200 feet in a mile.
Right.
And you just get through it, and we're chatting, we're staying focused, and we get to the top of that aid station, and it was a great aid station. They helped cool us off, and that's where I first saw Eric Nelson, the other Utahn that I hadn't met. You know, and so he left before me, and then Amy was starting to struggle with her stomach there, and I got out of the aid station quick and took off. And that section's pretty runnable from the top of Devil's Thumb, then you go down into what they call El Dorado Creek, which is at mile 52. And so this section from basically Last Chance to Michigan Bluff, mile 47, 48 to 54, 55-ish, it takes forever.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's part of the problem, too, is mentally you just got to know that you're going to be uncomfortable.
Right.
But you've got to stay on top of your calories and your hydration, or else you're going to cook. And I just kept moving forward, staying focused. And we get into El Dorado Creek, and me and Eric started working together a little bit. Hit the bottom there real quick. It was all, again, the descent was all in the sun.
Right.
So baking on the descent, I started to cramp a little bit. On my inner thigh, my inner left thigh, and so I backed off for a minute and did a few things, took a couple salt tabs. I think it's more of a mental thing than anything, because immediately my cramp went away.
Yeah.
There's no way it worked that fast.
No.
But I walked it off for a minute and was able to run the rest of the way into the aid station. So that's like a 5-mile segment, I think, from the top. Well, no, it was probably only about 3. It seemed like about 10. But 3-mile segment down into this other canyon to El Dorado Creek, and stopped at the aid station. Then we hiked out, all in the shade again. So that was a relief. I just kept telling myself it was a relief.
Right.
And that climb's a little longer, but not as steep. And again, I'd prefer the Devil's Thumb climb to that climb because it's shorter, and you feel like it's done faster. And then get to Michigan Bluff, and that's where you really started to see people struggling a lot. So that's mile 54 or 55, and it's hot, and it's on a paved road.
Ooh.
And it's where I started to wonder if I was going to make 24 hours.
Right.
I was 25 minutes behind now, so I'd cut some time off, but I was like, man, here we are at 50 whatever. You know, I'm 13 plus hours into the race, and I've got to pretty much run an even split at this point to get her done, and maybe even negative split.
Because you're about halfway through at that point.
Yeah, a little over half. I think our 50 miles was in. I mean, I think I did negative split it. I'd have to go back and look.
Right.
I haven't been able to mentally process the splits yet, but I think we ran it in about 12:15 that first 50 miles.
Right.
Maybe 12:20, and it was not the hardest I could have pushed, but I felt like I had pushed it pretty good.
Right.
Under control, but pretty good. And so I get in there, and I see Chris Pope again and my crew, and Chris Pope's like, well, how's your hydration doing? I was like, I think pretty good. He's like, well, have you peed? And I was like, I can't remember the last time I peed. And he's like, well, have you been taking electrolytes? And I was like, yeah, I've been taking a ton. I couldn't tell you how many things of Roctane I drank, and I'd taken 4 salt tabs. And I was like, I think my electrolytes are fine. He's like, well, do you think you've had too many? It's like, I might have.
Right.
I might be on that other side of the spectrum. And with the heat, and my stomach had started to kind of feel like, you know, like it wasn't ready to throw up, but it was just like it wasn't processing anything.
Right.
Everything was stuck there. And I was like, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk out of here, and I'm just going to drink water and see if I can flush some of this through.
Right.
And so I did that for 15 minutes is all it took of me just drinking water, and I peed.
Right.
And my stomach started to feel better. And then there's a nice, after you climb a bit, there's another nice descent, and this one was all shaded. And it's called Volcano Canyon, I think.
Right.
This is before the big Forest Hill aid station. where I can pick up my pacer. So I'm working okay. I'm starting to feel better now. It's starting to cool off finally.
What time of day?
So it would have been about 7 o'clock
at night.
Yeah.
Okay. And so for the first part of your race, not doing the second half, for the first part of your race, did it go according to how you were hoping it would go? Like you had a game plan going in. Was that kind of close as you think you could have been, or was there anything off?
So I thought I was going to be faster.
Okay.
To be honest, the effort at Squaw Peak felt so easy. I mean, to say that, I don't mean to sound rude or anything, but I felt so controlled at Squaw Peak that I thought it'd be silly if I didn't run 10:30 that first half at Western. I mean, I really, like, in my mind, I was like, oh, man. But at the same time, I knew I had to be smart.
Right.
So I wasn't going to go out there and just say, I'm running a 10:30 first 50 no matter what, or I'm running an 11-hour first 50. And so I just kind of played it by feel, which probably saved my day.
Right.
I would have died probably out there if I hadn't run that way. But it took everything I had mentally to not give up and say, okay, well, I'm running way too slow to achieve this.
Right.
Because who in their right mind thinks they're going to run as fast the second half of 100 as they did the first half?
Not many people.
Not many.
Right.
But the course lays out that way out there. So you're going through the heat, you're going through all these canyons. All the climbing and the hard climbs are out of the way at that point.
Right.
The climb out of Volcano Canyon into Forest Hill is not bad. I was able to hike very quickly and with some spurts of flat running, because there's some switchbacks in there. I mean, we're talking like a 15-minute mile up that. So, I mean, it's not bad. Mm-hmm. And you're in the shade and, there's a creek down there. The front runners, that's one of their worst canyons, I think.
Right.
Is Eldorado or Volcano Canyon because of where the sun is. It's so funny to just hear everybody's stories of where it's the worst.
Their time of the race.
Because most of them, it's from Volcano Canyon to the river is their worst section. Those guys at the front.
Right.
But for where I was in the race, it was from the descent into Devil's Thumb until Forest Hill.
Right.
Is what the hardest part was. So get into Forest Hill and you hit some pavement there again. The pavement at Michigan Bluff's like not even a quarter mile.
Yeah.
So that's the other great thing about this race. I don't think people talk about enough. It is so much single track.
Right.
It is crazy that they were able to string so much single track together.
Right.
And that's what makes it so unique as well. Because, we have a lot of good single track races here, but there's a lot of fire road.
Yeah.
True.
So this
was pavement, fire road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Squaw, lots of pavement, lots of fire road. And here I was impressed because I envisioned it being more fire road.
Right.
But it was so much single track. And then you hit Forest Hill Road or Bath Road, whatever they want to call it, and it is just so cool because it's this just buttery downhill on pavement, but you can see just all the cars lined up, and you just get this big spurt of energy.
Yeah.
And so I ran that. It's probably a mile and a quarter section that you just see people lined up, and you get to the elementary school, and they're just announcing all sorts of crazy stuff. Here comes Preston, and here comes so-and-so, and here comes, and then right as I get there, they announce, and Jim Walmsley has just broke the course record in 14:30. So that's what time I got to Forest Hill.
Gotcha.
So my 100K split was like 14:30.
That's really good.
Which, I started to feel good. At that point, I think I was like 17 minutes behind 24-hour pace. So I'm kind of chipping away at that 24-hour. And just so everybody knows, I'm not that big of a dork with splits, but at every aid station they have, this is aid station this, mile this. It is this many miles to the next aid station.
Right.
This is 24-hour time.
Oh.
This is the 30-hour cutoff time.
That's kind of cool
and
that
so,
you don't have to think about it.
No, you don't. And so I didn't have all these splits memorized for everybody out
Gotcha.
there. You didn't have to. I kind of didn't want to know until Forest Hill. But, it's there, and some of them I missed, some of them I didn't. But I had been making up time, and so Mike, Heather's husband, videoed this whole aid station. It was pretty cool to see, and I was there for 6 minutes, and that was probably my second longest aid station.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I was really efficient through the smaller aid stations. The main ones, when I saw my crew, I kind of you want to stay a little bit because you want them to feel like they're part of it, because it's got to be tough to crew.
Yeah.
Because you're sitting there all day, you're just hanging out, watching people go by.
And that one for me was probably the toughest race I've ever crewed, just because of the getting into the aid stations, how far apart you drive. Like we talk about the Bear or the other ones, you drive a long way. Plus there's some you have to shuttle into.
Yeah.
So it is a long day.
It takes some planning, and I guess they almost missed me at Robinson.
Yeah.
I didn't know because I guess whatever directions they typed in took them on some random fire road that was not the way to go.
Right.
And they figured it out pretty quickly because they knew that they were supposed to take a shuttle in to Robinson.
Okay.
And, so I had no idea, and my wife was like, well, we were glad that you were running a little bit behind because we would have missed you at Robinson.
Right.
And so that was good that they didn't miss me.
Yeah.
I would have been fine, though.
Yeah.
I was in a good place mentally enough that I could have, I was prepared for something weird to happen. And so we get into Forest Hill. I pick up Heather. They douse me down. I was probably my last ice bath was at Forest Hill. It was so cold, and putting ice in my hat. And I can't stress enough that that's the key, too, besides being conservative, is staying wet, staying cold all day, being uncomfortable, because it's not fun to be wet all day.
No,
and your feet are wet, and everything is just wet. If you have foot problems, this would be a tough race for you.
You got to embrace them.
You have to.
Did you change your shoes ever?
I did not.
Okay.
Socks?
I've never no sock changes.
Did you have like gangrene or? Like
no, I had a little bit of bacon foot. I did have a little. I thought I had blisters by the end, but I didn't start to feel my feet as a problem until like 90.
Right.
Mile 90.
And by then,
it's just whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah, and so but foot problems. If you have foot problems, you'd have to really figure out a mitigation plan early of what you were going to do.
Right.
Because
Crocs.
You're going through You're going through so many stream crossings, and there's just no way to get around them.
Yeah.
And this was a low water year because so I can only imagine in the higher water years when there's more snow and more runoff.
Right.
They're probably more like rivers than streams. So plan on getting your feet wet if you're listening to this, thinking about getting ready for this race. So we get into Forest Hill and get the last ice bath, and we take off. And Heather's really focused. To kind of describe her, she's an exercise and sports science major, former collegiate athlete, super fit. I mean, she won the Gibb Wallace race. She took second at the Arches 50 in February. She's a super fast runner and super focused.
Right.
And so she immediately starts talking to me, okay, what's our plan here? And my plan from 62, I was kind of riding a wave, is like, okay, we're going to be as far ahead of 24-hour cutoff at the river, mile 78, as we can.
Right.
We've got to be. And so I'm going to run kind of stupid here. Because I told her. I was like, I'm going to run stupid through these first two aid stations because it's called Cal Street is what they call it.
Right.
And so there's like Dardanelles is like 4 miles from Forest Hill. Then there's Cal 1, Cal 2, and then Rucky Chucky. And I was like, okay, we're going to run through that second Cal Street aid station as fast as possible. And I felt like I was clicking off. I felt like I was running a 7-minute mile.
Right.
We were running hard and focused, and my stomach had turned around at that point. It was feeling good, and we ran hard.
Right.
And so we got about 25 minutes ahead in the blink of an eye of the 24-hour pace. And then I was like, okay, we're going to start running a little smarter here. A little more. We're going to think sustainability a little bit longer.
Right.
And so into the river, I start thinking sustainability, but then I just kept running hard. and so we get to the river, and I didn't know how hard I had pushed until we got there, and my crew's there too.
Right.
And I started to feel a little dizzy.
Uh-oh.
I was like, and I almost fell over. I argued with my wife about something that she had already done, and I told her she didn't do. Like, I thought I had given her gels, but that was like 3 aid stations. Like it was like way before. And like she's looking at me like, what are you talking about? There's no more gels that I was going to give you.
Right.
I was like, yeah, there is. There's gels. I've got to have those gels. And I'm like, aid station volunteers are keeping me upright. But I was lucid, but not really. I was pretty loopy. And then Heather hurries and hops in the porta potty before we cross the river, and I start following her over there because I don't know where the river's at.
Right.
Like, it's right there. It's all lit up. It's like there's lights all over. Yeah. They've got Christmas lights, like a runway down to it.
Yeah, where is this place?
I'm like, where's the river? Like, I'm like following Heather over here, and my wife's like, the river's this way. I was like, oh, and I start walking. She's like, well, aren't you going to wait for Heather? And I was like, no, I'm good. And just like start going down, and I was really loopy. And she's like, "Oh, here, drink some more Red Bull." And so like I drank a Red Bull, and here, and like they're sneaky with the calories, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. And anyways, there was some funny stuff in that section. Like I had been eating cold quesadillas fine, and in that section before the river, they had some warm ones, and I took one bite of it and like dry heaved and like gave it to Heather. I was like, "This sucks," and, it's where my stomach started to not be perfect, because I was running a little too hard probably, but I had to. Yeah, I was focused, and so we crossed the river, and it's a climb up to Green Gate. It's like a 2-mile climb, pretty steep. And you're tired, and I didn't care. I was just like, okay, let's just move. We'll hike. A couple people go running by, and I was a total jerk. I was so tired. I was like, what are those people doing? Like I said to Heather, I was like, why are they running this? That's so stupid. I was like, you were loopy. And I'm sure they heard me, because actually one of them, we kind of leapfrogged with this pair, and they kind of explained why they were running the uphills later, because we would pass them on all the downhills. And
you're probably looking at them like, I don't care. Why are you telling me this?
And he's like, and the guy's pacer was pretty funny. He's like, yeah, Frank here, he's got 18-hour fitness on this course, but he's having a bad day. But all we can do is run the uphills right now. Right. So we're going to just run the uphills. You guys keep running the downs. We'll keep seeing you. Yeah. And so it was just funny. So we're just like, there's a bunch of people chasing 24 hours at that point, right? Everybody's just focused. And you hit Green Gate, and then it's the start of the Auburn Lake Trails District, they call it. And it's all dark, obviously, through here. I mean, it's been dark since the first Cal Street aid station. And I start feeling good. And I ran extra hard through that section. All the way into mile 90. We were in and out of aid stations. I was eating everything I could. And we dropped a 9:45 in there. Nice. And Heather's like, are you sure we can keep running like this? And I was like, we just got to go. I've got to get ahead of that cutoff. I've got to get ahead. I told her at one point, I don't want to be the guy that comes in at 24:05. Yeah. I will not be that guy. And she's like, okay, just be smart. Keep eating. Keep doing this. And I think my body started to cool down, and I started to pee a lot. Right. And so I started to get worried that something was wrong with me. I don't know why. I mean, the pee was clear. It wasn't like it was a problem. And we pushed it into mile 90, and all of a sudden my stomach all at once fell apart, but we were like 45 minutes ahead of the 24-hour cutoff. Right. I was like, okay, 10 miles, I can basically walk all but a mile and a half of this, and we've got the goal. And I kind of checked out mentally there. I was like, okay, we've got this. And that's my only regret of the race, is that I checked out right there. She kept trying to push me. Right. She was like, okay, let's run. You can run. And I was like, no, I can't run. Not my goal. Yeah. Good. And so I ran the parts that I had to. I did everything I put in my mouth at that point. I dry heaved. Couldn't keep any. I couldn't swallow anything. It's probably a combination of just 90 miles and fatigue. And we walked it in, through all those iconic sections, through the crossing of the highway. Up to the new aid station. They used to have the aid station, I guess, right at the highway, and now they don't. You have to do this little kind of technical climb up to the valley where you run across this beautiful meadow. I'm sure in the day it's beautiful. You see all the pictures of the front runners during the day go through there. But I get to that aid station at 94, and they're like, okay, what do you need? And I was like, nothing, and I just walked through. The finish line. Yeah, exactly. I just walked through. So the last 10 miles, I probably drank 4 ounces of water, and that was it. Gotcha. I mean, that's how it was going. And so we walked through there. It's a descent down into No Hands, and at No Hands, so that descent is an easy descent, I'm sure, but on those legs it felt super technical, and my Ultra Spire light kind of started to fade. And so my depth perception was off, and I used that as an excuse to not run it, And it was super dusty, and I couldn't see. Yeah. Okay. I actually was a little worried that I was like, I don't want to take a digger now. Right. I mean, if I was going to fall, I should have fallen earlier. Right. And so I didn't fall all day. That's the first for me, just for the record. In every other ultra race, I've fallen multiple times. Nice. No falls at Western. So we get to No Hands. I tried some ginger ale, spit it out immediately, and I was like, okay. Let's just walk. And this is the only part of the course where I was mad that I didn't know the course, because it's super runnable after no hands for about a mile. And I just kept thinking, well, the climb's here somewhere. Yeah. You know, why am I going to run? There's a climb.
Right.
And so I walked, and I had, so now we're back to the top 100 thing. I had gone all the way up to 86th place, I think.
Oh, okay.
We had passed lots of people in that section. We really were running hard. It wasn't just me feeling like it. And I got passed by like 20 people from no hands to the end.
No hands, huh?
Yeah.
Now, I remember when I was pacing, no hands to basically when you come out onto the road seems forever.
It does. It does, and it seems even more forever when your pacer is doing a really good job and you can't talk because you're angry, not at her, but just at this. You're like, I just want to be done, you know. And I was still a little stressed about the time, just because you can't do math. Right. It's like I think I can walk it in, and I just kept walking. I didn't stop, so that was good. I knew I couldn't stop, so then that climb gets pretty grunty at the end there. Yeah. I know people run it. Yeah. I wish I would have. But I had this weird thought in my head, too. Like, your mind plays weird games with you. Right. It's like, well, if you push too hard, you're going to be the guy that passes out on the track and doesn't finish. I was like, you've got your goal. Why push it any harder and collapse and not be able to finish? That was a legitimate thought that went through my mind, and probably not legitimate, but it felt like it. Felt real at the moment. And so we get to the top of the road, and Heather's husband's there at that little aid station there at Roby Point, and then that's the worst part of the race is right here. It's like a half mile of steep paved uphill. Steep. So you get done with the dirt, you're not done with the climb. Right. And then Mike's like, oh, just to those lights is all we've got to go. And then it's done. And he's like, oh, wait, those were the wrong lights. Oh, no. I think he was kind of teasing me, too. Guy. But it was funny. And I didn't care. I knew it was going to be long, longer than I wanted it to be. And we walked, and I was like, I'm just walking it in. I'm not running. I was like, this is stupid. And so we're walking down the paved road now, and it's really cool to be there. And you start hearing the stadium. You start hearing the announcer in the stadium, and then this guy comes up behind me, and it was a guy that I had worked with all day. His name was Ian from Vancouver. And he's like, we did it, buddy. We did it. And because me and him had been super focused on, and early on, I mean, there's pictures of us at Robinson Flat together. So 30 miles we leapfrogged. From 30 miles on, we were right there. And that gave me the energy I needed, and I was able somehow, magically, to be able to run again. And we ran it in. But it was once you hit that track, you have to run. Well, there was people that didn't. Oh, I know. But I was going to be one of those people. Yeah. I was pretty determined until Ian came up behind me and got me all fired up. Just because we ran a smart race. Yeah. Right. And like I said, looking back on it, I could have maybe squozed another 30 minutes out of it from the day I had if I wouldn't have given up mentally. Right. I mean, not given up, but just I had reached my end. Right. I had worked so hard. That mile from 62 to 90, I've never worked so hard in my life in any kind of physical activity. I was pushing it so hard. Nice. I was pretty proud of that effort because that's what I wanted to do going in. Right. And, then I kind of gave myself a break, which, good or bad, maybe I should have thought more sustainability through that section, but it worked out. It did. We got to the end.
So kind of regressing a little bit, just back on the course itself. I mean, when we talked to you last time, you talked about mentally, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and we've heard it throughout this description here. Overall, though, considering what you went through, how you've trained for it, do you feel like the mental side you kept it together? And I know you say you checked out at 90, but I mean, that's 90 miles. Yeah. You still hit your goal. Right?
Yeah, and I would say compared to Bear, it was night and day. I was so much more dialed in. Right. I will say this to anybody that's kind of new to 100-milers. I mean, this was just my second. Going under 24 hours in a mountain course is no joke. Right. Western States, people run fast times not because it's an easy course, but because it takes a lot to get in. Right. Yeah. All the fast people are there, so that inflates the times. Mm-hmm. And then everybody who's running the race is I mean, multiple 100-mile finishes under their belts.
Right.
I was probably one of the least experienced runners there because people are, putting in for 5, 6, 7 straight years to just get in.
Right.
And people put everything they have into that race. That's why the times are fast.
Yeah.
Because it's an elite field. Even the back of the pack is elite. I mean, you got people finishing in 27 hours that have won races.
Right.
Well, and I think it goes back to this. It's like you don't know if you'll ever get in again.
Exactly.
So it's like that's a race that if you want to do it, I mean, you got to be ready for it. It's not one of those, I'll do it next year.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
And generally speaking, I think that it's early enough in the season that people aren't as injured either.
True.
I think that helps the times.
It's
an early 100.
Yeah.
People are feeling good coming out of their winter stuff.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of things. Don't get it. I thought it was going to be easier I thought the course was going to be easier than the Bear.
Right.
But it was not.
It's a different course.
It's different.
Yeah.
It's hot.
Yep.
Downhill.
It's downhill.
Right.
It pounds you. But there's lots of climbing. I mean, there's 18,000 feet of climbing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's 18,000 feet's not a road marathon.
No.
It's the real deal. And the amount of focus that it takes to go under 24 hours, it was exhausting as much as the physical part of it.
Right.
Because you just can't show up and do that.
No.
Yeah.
Well, some people might be able to, but I can't.
I think that just there's so many factors. I don't know if you really could. I mean, there's things you can't control, like the heat, and you see people training in parkas and training that way. But at the end of the day, once you get on the course, I mean, it's still different. Like you're in a t-shirt that's wet, not in a parka and a beanie and pants. And so, I mean, you can, just like any race, you can prepare as much as you want, but once you get in it, it's just you're in it. Right?
Yeah, for sure. And going with the heat too. People talk about heat training versus just a heat plan, right? And you heard elites, non-elites, all talking about different things. And,
right.
And I dabbled in a little bit of both. I ran in the day. I did a whole full-on long sleeve run, and I just felt like that was not beneficial. I felt so drained, and so I did one official heat training run.
Right.
And I think that you just got to have a plan is the key, right? Whether your plan is to heat train or whether your plan is to stay cold all day or as cool as you can, that you just got to execute it.
Right.
And so that's...
And I think one thing you mentioned early on, too, is when you do have a plan, I think planning for 100, and this is my experience talking to a few people as well, by no means an expert, it really... There's no plan until 50 or 60.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you hit 50 or 60, that's when things start to take place.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people say, oh, the 100-mile races don't start till mile 60.
Yeah.
Right. Because, like you said, you were 45 minutes or so far behind. So mentally, if you would have started to check out, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm that far behind early, I should be faster, it's over.
Yeah.
So you really have to take a big picture, sky view, saying, okay, your finish time matters, not your mile 30 time.
Exactly,
right?
and you've got to have the confidence too that you can do that. I mean, I struggled with that at times during the day. Is like, man, my legs feel like lead right now. Mm-hmm. How am I going to run from 62 to the end? And you just have to stay focused, though.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest part of 100-mile races. What
do you feel like was the low point of that entire race? Like, if you could have one thing that jumps in your mind, what was like your low point of that race?
It's kind of hard to say. I mean, where I felt the most discouraged early in the race was that descent into Devils. I was feeling pretty sorry for myself there, just because it was so long and so hot.
Right.
As far as my low mental point would have been from 90 to the finish. I mean, that's kind of it was kind of, well, I guess 90 to the track, and then I felt good. But that was my lowest part. I wasn't talking. I wasn't eating. I felt like I did at points during the Bear where I was just done.
Right.
But I knew I had reached my goal. And, like you say, like I was saying, maybe your goal is almost a detriment once you meet it, because then you kind of like, I got my goal. Mm-hmm. And my super A, awesome, if it was 80 degrees and everything went perfect day, would have been like maybe 22 hours.
Right.
But that was not even close.
Yeah.
And so I think that something to keep in mind for me going forward is to readjust your goals no matter what.
Right.
Whether it's faster, whether it's slower. Like maybe when I got 45 minutes ahead, my next goal should have been like, okay, well, let's go under 23.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if I would have got ahead of that, well, let's go under 23:30.
Right.
Or 22:30, and just kind of work at it that way.
Right.
Instead of just settling. I think it's easy to do when you're tired.
Right.
Settle.
Well, and again, it's 100 miles, so things change so dramatically and sometimes drastically.
Yeah.
To where if you would have said that, I mean, even though you're sub 24, if you'd have been pushing for 22:30 and then started fading the other way, in your mind you could have went, oh man, I can't keep fading to that. So that's another worry.
Exactly.
Right? So I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword no matter how you look at it. But I mean, really, at the end of the day, sub 24 was the goal.
It was the goal.
You hit. I mean, a lot of times it's, I want to finish, or I want to do this, but 24, that was your goal. You did it.
Yep.
And you can look back now and say, oh, I coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, you've got the buckle sitting next to
Yeah.
you, so you really can't ask for much more.
And that's why you keep doing it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, for me, draws me back to it.
So is it a race you want to do again?
I'll put in for it again.
Yeah.
It was tough, though. It was much tougher on me than I expected.
Right.
But now I know what to expect.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's funny, though, a lot of people run worse their second time out there, I think, than they do their first time.
They go out a little
Yeah,
too fast.
because they think they...
Oh, I did it here last year.
Right.
Because it's different every year. No matter.
Is.
I mean, you could be better fit, everything else, but if you run different somewhere, you get the wrong calorie at the wrong time. So it's not as simple as I trained better. I knew the course. I should go faster. It's like, oh, crap, you know.
Because course knowledge is a big deal.
Yeah,
you guys know that. When you know what's coming, you can prepare yourself.
And sometimes, to me, course knowledge could be a negative impact.
It can if you're in the low spot at the wrong time.
Because you're like, oh, God, I got this climb. I don't want to do this climb today.
Yeah,
you know, or
exactly.
whatever. When you know, before going in. Like, I remember the very first time I did Wasatch, I never did chin scraper. And that's all I heard about, and I was so scared. And I remember I didn't want to train on it because I was terrified of it.
Yeah.
First time I ran it, I got to the top of chin scraper, and I was like, that was chin scraper. Like,
that was
I was
deal.
so worked up over something, and maybe, and it's not easy,
Yeah.
but I think because of how many people worked it up to a certain hype,
Right.
I was expecting, like, literally to kind of fall backwards and fall off a mountain. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, and that's kind of like Devil's Thumb. Devil's Thumb is a steep, stout climb. It is hot. It sucks. No way around it. But for me personally, the hardest climb of the day was from the bottom of Duncan Canyon up to Robinson Flat.
Yeah.
Right.
That took the longest. It was the most exposed climb I had all day, and I hated it. All the other climbs were just normal climbs that you encounter in a 100-mile mountain race.
Right.
So it is weird how everybody has a different view of the same course. And yeah, I look forward to going back one day.
What would you do differently if you got back? Say next year you got in. Is there anything you'd do differently as far as your training goes?
So as far as my training goes, I don't know that I would do much different. I think I was right about where my threshold is. I did like 9 straight weeks of over 70 miles, between 70 and 80. And I think that was plenty and about what my body could take.
Right.
I'd like to be a little lighter.
Yeah.
You know, that would be one thing that I'd change. If I could race at 175 or 180, I think that would make a big difference.
Right.
Obviously. And then one big thing is I did a lot of drop bags. I didn't rely on my crew to bring a lot of stuff to aid stations to take pressure off of them.
Right.
But that made it so I pre-mixed all my Roctane because I wanted to save time.
Right.
Because that takes time.
It does.
To mix it. And so I had it in just bottles ready to go, and it was so hot. And the flasks that I had, the cap is too small to put ice in.
Yeah.
And so I was drinking hot drinks for a lot of the day.
Rock tea.
Yeah, it was definitely not Roctane, it was rock tea, and it wasn't the Summit tea flavor, unfortunately. But that would have been a change too. I would have had them bring cold drinks to the spots they could be at.
Right.
So those would be my big takeaways. I think I ran plenty. I mean, as far as my training, I think it was pretty appropriate for the race. You have to do mountain climbing and mountain running, but you have to do a lot of shoreline trail type running too.
Yeah. Right.
I think I did pretty well with that.
Gotcha.
So overall, good weekend.
Yeah, great weekend, and I can't say enough about the crew from Utah that was out there that I was around. You know, Brandon Dace had a good day. Eric Nelson had a great day, finished right behind me. Amy had some stomach issues, but finished strong. I mean, it was cool to be able to run and work with us 3 Utahns together. You know, I kept cracking jokes, you know, what are the odds that 3 Utahns would all be in the Devil's Thumb aid station all at once?
Right.
You know, and people are like, what are you talking about?
Go away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's an incredible atmosphere out there, and just the ultra community is incredible.
Yeah.
And that event showcases that more than anything.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. We're psyched. We're super pumped for how well you did. We followed along. They have great tracking, obviously.
Yeah.
Easy to find results.
Yep.
So that was awesome. So, and then you have the Bear coming up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your next race. You haven't
It
registered
is.
for anything else in between.
Yeah.
And so,
Not yet.
And the Bear, you want to do sub 24 there, right?
I do.
And after Western, do you feel more comfortable hitting that?
I'm more nervous about it.
All right.
But it's hard to compare, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Two different courses.
It's 2 different courses. The weather's different.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think us Utahns do a little bit better in the cold mountains rather than the warm, hot desert. Well, it's not the desert. It's mountains, too, but it felt like the desert. It'll depend on the weather at the Bear, too, right?
Yeah. Right.
We don't ever know what we're going to get up there.
We've been guaranteed
terrible.
it's supposed to be good.
Yeah, Bryce Warren's guaranteed perfect weather, and he reaffirmed at Logan Peak last week.
How does Bryce Warren know? Does he have a calculation?
I think he's pretty. He's got a crystal ball.
He's only run the race a few times.
Yeah, right. But he's guaranteed it for us. So I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, so that's the focus though, is heading into Bear. I'll run something between. I think I told you guys that on the last podcast. I don't know what though.
Right.
I've just got to decide.
Yeah, because some of them fill up quick if they're not already full.
Yeah, so some don't.
Yeah, some at all. Yeah, for sure. So away from that now, what everybody wants to know about, who's your pick for the World Cup now?
Well, my
because Argentina doesn't look so
right
good.
Now.
Yeah, no, we're missing Argentina.
Yeah,
that's okay.
I've got it recording.
Not much.
Yeah, Argentina doesn't look real good.
No.
They have kind of an issue with togetherness.
Well,
That's
right
the way
now,
I feel.
Well, apparently their coach is kind of just a figurehead at this point.
Yeah.
And they're picking their own starting lineup, so that should go really well.
That should go really well. No, they've always struggled in that federation, really since Maradona was done. I mean, I think they've won a World Cup since, but it's just been kind of a struggle. And you look at countries like Uruguay, and they're much smaller, but they're much more organized.
Right.
They have big personalities. I mean, Suarez is about as big of a personality.
He's a big chomper, huh?
Yeah, and so if you look, they can manage his attitude.
Yeah.
You look at these other teams that manage the attitudes just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have loved Argentina to pull something off, but it looks like it's done for this group.
I think they're
looking
done.
good.
Yeah.
So who's your favorite?
Well, I'd love it if it wasn't one of the normal.
Like Belgium?
I'd love Mexico.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I love Mexican soccer, but I would love to watch Mexico win.
I want to see them lose 7-0 in the
No, you
quarterfinal.
don't.
I really do.
Do you really?
Okay, 6. Once we know it gets past 3, it's going to be bad anyway.
I enjoyed, like you guys talked about on Thursday's podcast, I really enjoyed that Spain-Portugal game.
Yeah.
I mean, that was easy to watch for even people that don't like soccer.
Except the bad news is old Ronaldo should have been red carded yesterday.
I didn't see it.
No, I saw that. I don't think
he should. If it would have been anybody else, they would have got a red card.
Really?
Right before the second one, he looked at the guy. If he wouldn't have done that, calculated, sized him up, it would have been fine.
He sized him up.
Did they review it?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
And then he got mad. He got a yellow.
Yeah.
He was all upset. I'm like, dude.
He glanced him. I think if he clocked him a little harder,
I think it would have been another team.
Yeah.
They'd been red carded.
Yeah, if it would have been American for sure.
Oh, yeah.
He probably would have got a double red card.
Yeah,
They would have
yeah.
put 2 guys off.
Yeah.
No, yesterday I watched a little bit of the Russia-Uruguay game. Uruguay looks good.
Yeah.
I think they're playing well together. They seem very organized. I think that's what it takes. I mean, that's why Germany's so good every year, right?
Except this year
they're
they
not
got
as
it.
organized.
Tomorrow is a big day for them. If they can make it through the first round, which I think they will.
Yeah.
Belgium's still my pick if they can shore up their defense.
Yeah.
As of right now.
No, it's kind of wide open.
It is.
It really is
It
totally
could easily
wide
be
open.
a sneaker.
This is maybe the most wide open World Cup I can remember.
Yeah.
Because every other time is like, oh, yeah, this is France's year. Oh, yeah, this is Germany's year.
Because France hasn't looked that great.
No, they haven't.
Drew 0-0 against Denmark today.
Yeah.
So they don't look. I don't think they're the only team that stands out to me really is Belgium.
Yeah.
Right. No one else has put their foot forward because you got to look at the groups they're playing.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, those guys suck anyway. You should have beat them that bad.
Right.
Yeah.
So otherwise, I'm like, it's going to get interesting. It's going to come down to cards.
Yep. And the draws in the quarterfinals or whatever.
Yep.
I guess the round of 16.
Yep. They come out.
Quarterfinal.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So they'll be solidified here soon.
Yeah, and that plays a big role.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, as far as the teams I've watched, I like Uruguay as much as my Argentine friends wouldn't like that.
Right.
They call it the province. They don't even consider it a country. It's the province because it used to be part of Argentina.
Gotcha.
Right. So, anyways, the World Cup's been fun though.
Yeah, it's been good. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time. Huge congratulations.
Yeah.
Not just a congratulations, huge congratulations. I mean, it was cool to see you, talk to you right when you got in, basically, and then see the process leading up to it, because we've seen you on the trails, got you on the podcast, and then to see how well you've done. So cool.
Appreciate it.
Super cool. And bringing a silver Western States buckle to O-Town's always solid.
Yeah, it was a lot of hard work, but I appreciate all the support. I mean, some of the low points, that helps when you know that there's a lot of people there watching what you're doing, and not in a bad way. I mean, I enjoy pushing through, because it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough out there.
Makes it more rewarding at the end, too, though, right?
It does.
It's just kind of like,
for sure.
Double scoop ice cream. Just
Yeah. We didn't even go over what I've eaten since the race. We could have a whole other podcast about
that.
That.
Be, right? That could be.
Yeah, it's been good.
Well, right on. Well, thanks again for coming on. Congratulations, and good luck at the Bear.
Thank you. We'll see you guys out there.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Trail Manners Podcast. We'd like to thank Preston Wood for taking the time to join us today. And you can check more of the race on the Western States website, or you can head over to the Trail Manners website, check out our store page, hit us up on the contact page, let us know what you want to see, who you want to hear, or if you would like to be on the show. Until next time, this is Eric Manning with Joel Hatch reminding you, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. Now go get it.